And good evening, Broncos country, and welcome to the 5280 podcast. I'm Glenn Hauser, again, taking the reins from Mundungus Creevy. Apparently, when the Broncos were eliminated from the playoffs, he decided he was eliminated.
Yep, he's out.
Cam's out too. But anyway, we got Gage Madrid as always, and a special guest today. Hopefully his rants don't disappoint. Bronco Bill. Bill, welcome.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Happy New Year's, guys.
Bill,
Same
I'm
here.
looking forward to at least one disagreement I know you and I are going to have. It's going to be great.
Oh, yeah, we're going to disagree, and I'm going to be ranting and raving like I always do. So, turn down the volume if you don't want to hear it. It's okay.
I can't. I'm hosting.
Oh, that's true.
Gage, I have a prediction that you guys are going to have a disagreement in the next 3 minutes.
It's going to happen. I already know what the topic's going to be, too. It's going to happen.
Okay, well, then I'm in the dark, but obviously I won't be for long. I can tell you that.
So Bill is the host of Elevation Orange and Broncos Breakdown on the MHRT network, and also sits with Mike during the neighborhood live stream. So anyway, guys, lots to talk about. Broncos have a new quarterback, a new sheriff in town, so to speak, win the game, but are done from playoff elimination, and just proving that you can never count on other people doing the work for you. You gotta strike when the iron's hot.
Got to take care of business, and the Broncos did not take care of business.
Especially the first two games of the season. Well, I mean, instead of 8-8, we would have been 10-6.
Yep, and going against a 3-11 Patriots team at home on Christmas Eve, that is a game that the Broncos should have won, and for all intents and purposes, that's the game that killed them.
Yep. Well, yeah, absolutely. But the thing that bothers me about, and I know that we're going to get into this thing, but the thing that bothers me about the Patriots game is it really looked to me like Russell was being sabotaged. And I don't like the way that looked.
How do you feel that way? I'm curious. How do you feel Russ was being sabotaged?
Just some of the plays that Sean Payton was putting out there. I mean, come on. You first off, he calls timeouts when New England is purposely trying to go to overtime, and then he burns his timeouts, and then they burn him with that deep pass. And before that, when the Broncos had the ball, it was 3 and out. I mean, less than a minute worth of time off the clock. It was just I just don't understand what Sean Payton was doing other than trying. And I know I'm going to get flack for this, and I've said it in my other shows, trying to throw Russ under the bus.
I think that it's more Sean just not trusting Russ and the relationship not gelling. I'm genuinely curious as to why a head coach would sabotage his own player respectfully. I just don't necessarily think that's the case. But when it comes to calling the timeouts, I understand why he did it, because the Broncos were going to get the ball back with a minute and a half and 2 timeouts left or 1 timeout if they were to execute it properly. Then your best player, Pat Surtain, gets burned on that deep throw, and that throws a monkey wrench into the plan. I feel like it was a good intention, just executed like crap. Yeah. But in terms of, Sean Payton, I feel like he has not been perfect on a year with his play calling, especially in the third quarter. But that New England game, the 3 and outs, that was just, I feel like, more blundering than anything else. I feel like Andrew Mason worded it the best. It's better to attribute something that simply could be attributed to stupidity than malice. I don't think it was malice there. I think it was some stupidity from Sean Payton. That's just my personal stance on that.
Yeah, I think I agree with Gage, Bill. I've heard this, or as Captain Kirk would say, sabotage. I've heard that a lot this week. But you have a whole locker room of players and coaches to answer to if you're going to try to. Not to mention, I mean, we then have, fixing games essentially. Like it could all tie in together. So I think it was like Gage explained. He wanted that opportunity to get the ball back and win the game in regulation, just like when the Patriots won that first Super Bowl and John Madden's like, kneel the ball, and I don't like what's happening here, and the Patriots took it with in their own hands. It's exactly what I was saying earlier. You got to do that, and it just didn't work out. It's just one of those things that just wasn't in the cards, and you can tell like the players and the coaches just since that Patriot game, they knew that they were doomed. It was such a small. It went from an 80% chance if they beat the Patriots of making the playoffs to a 5% chance. Going into that Charger game, and it's just too much to overcome. I mean, you just, and for a while there that day, and Gage, I don't know if you were like able to check, like, monitor it from your seat in the stadium, but for a while there, everything was going the Broncos' way. Like the things that were supposed to happen were being checked off. And it is interesting because and I know I'm rambling here, but I would see some reports would say it was better if Houston won this game. Other reports would say it was better than the other team won this game. It was hard to. I went with the Eric Dalala because he works for the team, and I thought that would. I thought that was the one, but it just didn't pan out, and here we are, 500 and fighting for a to go 9-8.
First winning record since 2016, man.
Well, it ain't there yet, but we're hoping.
We're hoping it'll be there. Exactly. We got to take care of business this coming week against the Raiders, the Jarrett Stidham revenge game. But first, we should probably dive into this first Jarrett Stidham game against the Los Angeles Chargers.
All right, here's where we're going to disagree, but go on.
Oh, yeah, it's coming.
Go ahead. I got some stats, so just go ahead.
All right, Bill, why don't you go ahead and flash off the stats from Jarrett Stidham on the day?
Okay. Let me back away.
Like, down Bill's stats.
Okay, so let me back up a bit, okay?
Sure.
I'm not going to dive into the whole Russell Wilson, why he was benched and money and play and all that kind of stuff, because I've beaten that thing to death in my Friday show and in my Elevation Orange yesterday. However, I am going to say this, okay? How can you fault Russell Wilson for the last 4 games that he played, losing 3 of the 4 when he was on a 5-game win streak, beat Kansas City, beat the Vikings, beat the Browns, beat the Bills, okay? Same head coach, same quarterback, all right? Now let me get into stats by comparison from yesterday's game, okay? First off, Russell Wilson against the Chargers, and then Stidham against the Chargers. Russell 21 of 33, Stidham 20 of 32. Passing yards identical, 224 to 224. 2 touchdowns for Russ, 1 interception, 1 touchdown for Stidham, and no interceptions, okay? That's a little bit better. 6 carries each, 5 rushing yards for Russ, 6 rushing yards for Stidham. Basically, it was identical. How in heaven's name can you justify the fact that Russell Wilson's on the sideline if it's not money?
It is money.
It's all money.
There you go. But that's not what Sean Payton is saying.
He can't say it.
Why not?
Otherwise, because he's going to get in trouble with the NFL and the NFLPA.
But Russell Wilson came out. But Russell Wilson came out and said it, and they're still going to be in trouble.
Yeah, but if he says it, then he's just incriminating himself. Why would he come out and say it? The only way that he can save face a little bit is say that it was a performance decision. And I think that to an extent, there is some merit to that. There is some things beyond the numbers I feel like Jarrett Stidham did a better job of than Russell Wilson. Mostly it was pre-snap stuff, getting him into the right look, identifying the Mike linebacker. I don't think I've seen Russ identify the Mike linebacker once this year, and Stidham was doing it all game long. Just little stuff like that, directing the protection. I think that's what Sean was really looking for when he made this move. But the main reason why Russ got benched, and we all know it, is the financial ramifications. Russ knows it. The team knows it. Russ isn't afraid to come out and spill the truth. The team has to save face a little bit. They can't, but we all know that's why this move was made and why Russell and the Broncos have broken up.
All right, let me ask you a question, okay? When Sean Payton, I read this just today, when Sean Payton was hired, during the interview, he said that he had some questions and concerns about Russell Wilson working or being able to play in his system. Okay. And yet he still took the job because he thought maybe he could work it out. It's not working. So, to have Russell Wilson on the team with giving up all those draft picks, giving up those players, it's turned into another egg on the face for the Denver Broncos. And this does not look good at all moving forward, guys. And I know Russell Wilson's not going to come back next year for all intents and purposes. But my question is, where do we go from here? Do we stick with Stidham? Do we go for a quarterback? Maybe, I don't know what draft what draft level we're going to be at position-wise. I mean, I just don't know where to go with this team now. What do you guys think?
I think in some ways this was always the plan going into this with Sean Payton, is they were going to use this 1 year with Russell Wilson to see if it could work. They found a formula there in that 5-game winning streak where it could work. And they approached Russell about restructuring that or deferring those guarantees. So that way they wouldn't have to make a 2-year decision on him this offseason and take it more of a year-to-year basis. So I feel like that was kind of the plan. When Russell didn't want to go for it, and for me, that's understandable. It's not to the benefit of Russ to do that. Then that's when the Broncos were going to execute the next phase of the plan. That was always in place. That's why they brought in Jarrett Stidham in the event that they had go to him, and they have this one exit avenue to get out of this contract. Otherwise they can't do it until the end of the 2025 season. So I feel like in terms of where this team goes, they're going to make a move to trade up and get a quarterback. People who I've talked to who are in the know media wise are pretty certain that they are going to trade up and get a quarterback. I personally like Jaden Daniels. He's kind of my top guy. Michael Penix apparently generated a lot of buzz last night. I did not see the game. I'm going to go and watch that in a little bit because apparently it was really, really good from Penix. And then we still have JJ McCarthy. I don't necessarily think Caleb Williams or Drake May are going to be in the conversation realistically for the Denver Broncos, but then you got like Bo Nix as well. Plenty of other guys.
Yeah, but he's got injury. He's got injuries written all over him.
And that's also my concern with Michael Penix Jr. Because
that's what I mean.
He's blown out both of his knees and his shoulder. I just feel like that's very concerning. Let's see. I think Peyton said that. Can you bring that comment back up, Glenn?
Oh, you got it.
Yep. I think Peyton said that because he knew this day was going to come. He was going to bench Russell. Absolutely. I feel like that was always the plan, that if they weren't able to make things work with Russell Wilson, or if Russell wasn't going to go for their more long-term vision of adjusting those guarantees, this was always the plan.
Okay.
And, it's one of those things. So they approach him at the time, Bill. And it was an odd time to approach him because they had just beaten Kansas City. Maybe it was because of the bye week that's what the timing was.
Trade deadline.
Things like that. But the monkey wrench in the plan, first of all, is now we've seen that the NFLPA had gotten involved. A memo was sent basically telling them that you're not allowed to operate this way. I'm certain Sean Payton had no interaction with Russ or his agent on this, so he can then claim that it was a benching because of performance, because there's going to be a clash if things end up ending ugly here. The monkey wrench in the plan was that the Broncos start reeling off of these wins, and really you can't bench him at that point. But then when they lose 3 in a row, including a game to a team that would have essentially put them into the playoffs, at that point they were able to protect themselves from that. Personally, I thought we were going to see DiNucci as the second string quarterback, and Russ was just not going to be able to potentially see the field at all. And that way, you 100%. But again, if you do that, then you can't claim that it's a performance thing. It's all about the money.
Right.
So it's pretty complicated. But really, with it's all about the money. The Broncos can't admit that. And when you were talking about Peyton having these reservations of potentially about Russ in the interview process, I'm sure they laid out, well, we do have an exit opportunity after this season if it doesn't pan out, and it will put us in a squeeze against the salary cap, but here this is what it looks like if we end up moving on. And
where does George Payton? I mean, he's got to fit in all of this. He's made some mistakes big time. And I mean, he's got to be accountable for a lot of this debacle that's happened the last couple of years with Hackett, with extending Wilson's contract without even having him take a snap, on the field. I mean, and now the exit plan.
Let me stop you there on the snap thing. The man had 10 years of resume that's Hall of Fame worthy. I don't think we needed to see him in orange and blue to realize that he was worthy of an extension.
That was also an ownership decision.
Yeah, okay. Ownership pushed that. Albright had even mentioned that. Another thing, Bill, is he has that no trade clause, and I guarantee it has never come out. I've said it before on the show, but there's no way Russ would have waived that no trade if an extension were not on as part of the agreement.
Yep. Yeah, and they told him, listen, we're selling the team right now. We're going to wait until the sale goes through, but we're selling the team to the richest owners in NFL history. They're going to take care of you, buddy. And so I feel like there was kind of a gentleman's agreement there that contract was always going to come, and ownership was fully on board, and they pushed to get it done quickly once they got in. I mean, they were very dead set on extending Russell Wilson. Hackett and George Payton, they were a little more lukewarm about, but the ownership was very on board with the acumen and the name of Russell Wilson, and they wanted to ensure Russ was here long term. They talked about that even in, I believe, their opening press conference, that they wanted to get something done there with Russ. So that one I'm not going to put a blemish on George Payton for. However, some of the other things, Nathaniel Hackett, other personnel decisions, Randy Gregory, Frank Clark, many of these other decisions, the question is going to become, will Sean Payton and George Payton mesh long term? A lot of fan speculation about Sean Payton getting fired. All that is nonsense. Yeah. He is the Walton Penner's guy long term. It's all about getting who's going to work well with him. And the question is George Payton that guy? I don't think so, but maybe the Broncos see it differently.
Wow.
All right, I got to pull up this comment because Gage, a shout out from Flying Dragon Films. Good evening, fellas. Just started following the syndicate, and I love your content, Gage. Gage, tell us where. Why don't you do a quick plug?
Sure. So Broncos Syndicate on YouTube, we do almost daily Broncos content over there. News, notes, highlights, film analysis, all that good stuff. And also my other channel, Sparkin Sports NFL. We basically do the same thing for the other 32 teams. And we also put out Broncos content on that channel as well.
And Bill and I are complete afterthoughts. Now, Brad Smith, and Brad, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're in Australia. Hey, guys, Happy New Year. Does Jerry Jeudy survive next season? I don't think he's on the Broncos next year. What do you guys think?
Wow. Okay, so that takes me back to what Gage said earlier, that he thinks the Broncos are going to trade up in order to get a quarterback that they need. My fear is trading up means either Patrick Surtain, Justin Simmons, or Cortland Sutton, not Jerry Jeudy. But if Jerry Jeudy's on this team, do we use him as trade bait to move up, or is that out of the picture?
I think that I don't know if a team would be willing to do it just in terms of a trade to get the pick, but let's say they trade Jerry Jeudy and then use the pick that they get from another team as trade bait. So maybe not directly, but indirectly. I do think Jerry Jeudy is going to be traded. The Broncos are not going to pay him long term, and this is their decision year that they have to make on it. They have to see what kind of value they can get for Jeudy on the open market. He's not an alpha. He's not a number one receiver in the NFL. He'll be a good Robin if he's in the right system, in the right team. But in this Sean Payton offense, especially, Jerry Jeudy is just not a good fit. I mean, he did have a nice couple of catches from Jarrett Stidham, so maybe with a different quarterback, you never know. He does get open, but I think just in terms of his fit in the locker room, his fit on the field, it's just not working.
Yeah. Well, what about KJ Hamler or Tim Patrick?
Well, Hamler's not even on the roster anymore.
That's true. He's not.
Yeah, he's in Indianapolis, I think.
You're right.
Timmy P, financially, I think he's going to be a cap casualty, unfortunately.
Wow.
I love Timmy P, but I believe they can save like $12 million or something like that if they move on. That will be one of those moves that's going to have to be made to alleviate the dead money from Russell Wilson, which is going to be $35 million. And then the year after that, it's going to be $49 million. The good news is when it comes to signing free agents, the Broncos have liquid cash, which is a little bit more valuable than the salary cap because you can give these guys a crap ton of guaranteed money up front in terms of cash and then spread out some of the salary from later on. And it's a little bit more of a cap friendly situation. So the Broncos are very fortunate to have rich owners that are willing to spend money.
Yeah.
Tim Patrick may be one of those guys where they go to him and they say, you know, we can give you $2 to $3-4 million on a year deal. And thank goodness, you know, for Tim that he signed that big contract before these injury struggles happened because he's been able to collect the last 2 years. And it's funny, a lot of times like fans turn on a player, you know, like if they get hurt and they collected this big money, but nobody is upset at Tim Patrick. I think everybody's pretty happy that he was able to cash out and hopefully he can come back healthy. And I wouldn't be surprised based on the fact that he's still on the sideline. Like, you know, he has a presence there with the team. I could see them offering him a smaller deal or an incentive laden deal.
And he's quite the character on the sideline. You can never miss him when you're at Broncos games, even when he's under the big trench coat. Like he's jumping around. Even when he was injured, he was jumping around out there, celebrating with the guys, dapping everybody up. Him and Russell were actually kind of they were standing together most of the time on the sideline. I don't know if the cameras caught that on the TV copy, but Tim Patrick was kind of at Russell's hip a little bit on the sideline the other day. So it's really cool to see Timmy P's presence. He's still a big time leader in the locker room. Our longest tenured wide receiver that we have on the team. I think Timmy P might actually, if he's going to have to take a cheap 1 year deal, why not stay home?
Right. I, as an aside, I saw him during the first year he was injured. I was at a concession stand and he was in the line next to me. And I actually walked up to him and I didn't feel bad doing it because the woman he was with was wearing a bedazzled jean jacket that had 81 and Patrick on the back. And I'm like, all right, they're not trying to be too inconspicuous here, but it was pretty cool to see him actually.
Did you talk to him at all?
No, I just wished him well and thanked him, you know, for everything he's done for the team. That was
love Timmy P, man.
Yeah. So Jair, at this point, I just want to draft a QB, whoever it may be. I'm done with these free agent 1 year deals. They never work. And you know, I think you're in the majority at this point, Jair. And it's interesting if you look at some of the other teams and with all the backups that are playing, it's like the land of misfit Broncos starting quarterbacks. We had Flacco is just absolutely tearing up the league. He's the best number 15 quarterback in the AFC right now, oddly enough. And then we have Case Keenum. You know, who else was? We had Trevor Siemian playing. Like it was just, you know, we needed Craig Morton and Norris Weiss out there.
Call it Paxton Lynch.
No, let's don't.
even with all of the injuries, Paxton Lynch is still at home playing, Call of Duty or whatever. Madden. Yeah.
Cecil Lammy says he was friends with him on Xbox and that it's Madden.
It's Madden.
That's funny.
So. First of all, thank you to the people in the stream. These comments are great. It's great to have the dialogue going.
Yep.
And we don't mind getting away from the topics that we have at hand to talk about this. So Roger, proudly wearing a Dodgers shirt, especially after the recent signings for sure. Guessing it's number 17. Anyway, with what's going on with Russell Wilson, does that make free agents think twice before coming to Denver? I don't think so, but I think there's just too many appealing parts to the Denver Broncos and what's happening with the team and the practice facility and the rich owners and that the some of these players will overlook what's going on.
Absolutely.
Well, and they're also talking about building a new stadium, so I mean that could be a lure too.
Yep. I mean, with all these new facilities, from the practice facility to a potential new stadium coming, Denver's an awesome city to live in. It's a great place to raise your family, especially if you're living out in the suburbs, where these guys really like to make their homes, like in the Cherry Creek area. That'd be a great place to raise your family. There's just a lot of appealing things outside of just what the coaching situation, the front office situation is, but also the Broncos have the cash again to give these guys guaranteed money and potentially outbid other teams in that regard, because the one thing these guys like more than anything else when it comes to free agents, it's guaranteed money. They want money that's guaranteed to go in their pockets, and the Broncos can provide that.
Yeah, very true.
I don't think Russ moving on has anything to do with Tim Patrick going with him. And it's interesting because all of a sudden now I'm hearing people are talking about on the national media side, what teams would potentially not only want Russ, but who would be willing to trade for Russ and what a trade would look like for him. Yeah. And it's like, it's mind blowing that we've gotten to this point where it looked like a guy who's benched, a guy who's a cast off, could now be an appealing trade prospect, basically because the Broncos are on the hook for a lot of money, and Russ could just he could make himself available for the veteran minimum. I believe it's 1.2 for him. And so any team could trade for him, pay 1.2 for Russell Wilson and get the guy. And I mean, I think the Steelers right now would like a player like that, or, who knows if the Vikings can get Kirk Cousins. And I mean, I've even heard about the Raiders, but I don't think a trade would ever happen there. But perhaps if they release, he might be beelining it to Vegas. What do you guys think?
I think the Steelers are a very suitable candidate for Russell Wilson. I know that Mike Tomlin really likes Russell Wilson, and he could be somebody who could really fit that culture really well. So if there's one team that might want to make a move and trade for Russell Wilson, keep an eye on the Pittsburgh Steelers to do that. Maybe give up a 7th round pick. Denver still would have to absorb most of that money, but maybe Pittsburgh could take on a hair of it and make this a little bit more manageable for Denver to swallow, maybe take on some of his salary in 2025, where the Broncos are going to be on the hook for $49 million. I think they're perfectly content swallowing $35 million in 2024, but maybe if they can knock it down and only have to swallow $35 million in 2025, that would maybe make this a little bit more appealing. So I could see a possible trade like that getting facilitated.
I don't know. I was thinking about the Vikings and the Raiders myself, Glenn, because Vikings, they don't know what Kirk Cousins is going to be like when he comes back. Nobody knows what tearing an Achilles tendon is going to do for a quarterback, especially when he has to, step back and plant and maybe get rolled up on again or whatever. So to have a veteran quarterback behind Kirk Cousins, to me, would make a lot of sense. Pittsburgh makes sense too, but I'm also thinking Wilson has said it many, many times. All he wants to do is win. All he wants to do is get a championship. I don't see Pittsburgh being in that at that stage right now. Vikings are a much better team than Pittsburgh when it comes to wins and whatnot, and that's not a very strong division. Well, Detroit's gotten better, but still, there is playoff possibilities for the Vikings in that division. However, the Raiders, you can't count them out because you never know what Davis is going to do. He always takes retreads. He always takes, hand-me-downs kind of thing. So you never know about that. But are the Raiders on the verge of going to playoffs and beyond? Not really. So I'm looking at what Russell Wilson wants and where he wants to go. It's either going to be Minnesota. It could be, a team that is on the rise going to, the playoffs or right on the verge of going to playoffs.
The thing with Minnesota is I feel like they're very dead set on bringing Kirk Cousins back. I think they will. Really want, but Russell's not going to want to be a backup. Yeah. I really don't think Russ is going to go down that route. He's going to go to a team that's going to let him open the season as the starter, and the team that's most likely to do that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think Russell still is of the mindset that he can be a difference maker and take an organization over the top. So maybe he feels like he can do that in Pittsburgh with a much more stable front office situation and coaching situation than what he walked into here in Denver.
Yeah.
I think because that's how Russell's always going to view himself, even if that's not the reality of the situation anymore.
True.
And see, Bill, that's why it's so important to break it up over the course of the next 2 years and not just absorb the hit this year,
Right.
For a couple of different reasons. One, really having the main one being obviously to have the flexibility and not just absolutely having to just gut your roster and essentially write off next year. But, with the salary cap going up as it is, it's going to keep increasing. And so that $49 million gets cut down, sizably. Also, that's why we really can't go after, an established superstar because we can't afford their salary. But if we have Russ's salary plus a Stidham at $5 million, and then somebody else, a rookie at a smaller amount, all of a sudden you're in line paying three quarterbacks what some of the teams are paying star quarterbacks for just one guy.
Right.
So, excuse me. All right, I'm going to mute, but I'm going to pull up some comments if you have a second, if you guys don't mind reading for a second.
Sure. Absolutely. Do you guys think we are on the brink of a full rebuild? I don't necessarily think it's going to be a full, complete rebuild, but I do think that you have to rebuild certain areas of the team, like the defensive line. You have to rebuild your defensive line, your linebacker. So basically your front seven. I think there's going to be a rebuild there. There might be a mini rebuild in the secondary because PJ Locke is set to be a free agent. Obviously, Kareem Jackson's gone. So there may be some work to be done in the safety room, the number 2 boundary corner. So I could see some moves made there. Offensively, you've got to get a number 1 tight end because Greg Dulcich can no longer be depended on moving forward with these injury concerns. You have to at least get some more adequate depth on the offensive line, even though I feel like Cam Fleming's actually done a really nice job when he's had to step in when Mike McGlinchey's gotten hurt. But obviously McGlinchey, his play hasn't been great, and now he's starting to deal with some injuries. The Broncos need to have some steady insurance back there in case this were to happen. I think they might want to add another commodity at running back. Samaje Perine, I don't necessarily feel like is in the Broncos' plans long term, and they might want some more insurance for Javonte Williams. Jaleel has a nice role with the team, but they may want somebody to replace that Samaje role. So those are the areas where I feel like the Broncos are going to address outside of the obvious in quarterback this offseason.
Do you think they get rid of Perine after 1 year?
I mean, maybe it's all about if he wants to come back because he's on that 1 year deal. At the end of the day, it's up to him.
I thought he was on a 2. I'm sorry.
Oh, is he on a 2? That might be a mistake on my end.
You mentioned PJ Locke, and Flying Dragon Films is asking what will happen with PJ.
Sorry.
I think the Broncos are going to put their absolute best foot forward in keeping PJ. I mean, he's with Caden Stern's injury history, and hopefully he can come back strong. With Kareem gone, and PJ's performance, he's just been an incredible 1-2 punch with Justin. They're not going to want to let him go, right?
Problem is he's going to get paid.
Well, he needs to get paid.
Yeah, and the question is, will the Broncos be able to afford that after having to absorb this cap hit from the Russell Wilson deal? The Broncos want to keep him. The question is, will they able to afford to? There might be some other team out there that does outbid.
Well, couldn't they do a restructuring package, kind of like pay him so much this year and then backload it and guarantee that backload?
He'd have to agree to it, but maybe the Broncos could put a tag on him, put like a second round tender on him, so that way if a team wants to sign him in free agency, they'd have to give up a second round pick to the Broncos, and conveniently the Broncos don't have a second round pick, so if some teams willing to do that, that'd be good news for Denver, honestly, because they could very adequately get a replacement for PJ Locke in like the 3rd, 4th round, and then move forward, because obviously they do have some questions at the safety position. Delarian Turner-Yell, was he going to be in the future? I don't know, but now he's torn his ACL, probably isn't going to be in the future now. Caden Stearns has all these injury concerns. So right now, really the only solidified at safety that you have is Justin Simmons until we figure out what's going to happen with PJ Locke.
Yeah.
Right. So let's go back a little bit to the discussion about Jarrett Stidham and Russell Wilson. And Bill, you had the basically identical stats, between the two, and it was really kind of uncanny that, the completions was off by 1, the yardage was the same, even the rushing attempts and the rushing yards were nearly identical. I think the point that is made, and like Engage and I have talked about, we're Russell fans. We wanted this to work out.
I did too.
But at this point, it's clear that it's oil and water between the head coach and the quarterback, and I don't think Russ could do anything to get back in Sean Payton's good graces. I think it's really a done deal.
Yep.
But the issue is the disparity in the size of their paychecks and the identical performance, essentially.
Right.
So I think that's really where it should be a bigger disparity. It should be a bigger drop off if you're going with a guy who's starting his 3rd game, as a pro, and had never won a game as a NFL quarterback. And I think that's really where the debate starts and kind of ends at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're being completely honest, the guy who's on the cheaper deal operated at a higher level at the line of scrimmage than the 11-year veteran did, and Stidham's only been in the league for 5 years. That I didn't realize just how deficient Russell was in those areas until I watched Stidham run this offense in that game, and it really kind of opened my eyes a little bit. That was like, wow, man, they really were running a elementary version of this offense because Russell couldn't process stuff at the line of scrimmage. I was surprised that how different it was with Stidham under there, just in terms of, again, I don't even think I ever saw Russell line the protection, identify the Mike linebacker, all that stuff. Stidham was doing it on almost every play. That's what Sean really was looking for. Not necessarily, guys missing open receivers, because trust me, Stidham was far from accurate in that game. Yeah. He missed open guys. He underthrew passes. He threw passes behind receivers. His accuracy was not great in that game whatsoever, but he also stepped up into the pocket multiple times, whereas Russell would have tried to spin out of the pressure and ultimately end up spinning into a sack. It's just those little subtle things beyond the numbers that Stidham did at a much higher level that Russell did that really opened my eyes, even as somebody who loves Russell Wilson and really wanted this to work out. If the guy who's a 4th-round pick out of Auburn, who's been in the NFL half the amount of time as Russell has, is operating at a higher level, you got a problem.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, both of you. On that play from Stidham, when he moved up into the pocket and ran to his right and fired a dart to little Jordan Humphrey, and then he makes some incredible moves and gets into the end zone. Do both of you think Russell Wilson would have made that play?
I think Russell wouldn't have kept his eyes downfield to throw. I think he would have tried to run to get the first down.
Okay.
What I thought when I saw that play, and again, I hate disrespecting Russ in this fashion, but
me too.
But I because I thought about this, and obviously Jarrett got a massive help from little Jordan Humphrey stopping in the fashion that he did, doing the spin, breaking tackles. Burton had how many blocks running down the field? Jerry Jeudy showed an incredible hustle and got in the way of another defender, and just even Lil Jordan being able to reach out and get that touchdown. That was spectacular. But I thought about that play, and it kind of reminded me of like the highlight that we saw against the Patriots, where they kept showing Russell kind of spinning out into the sack, and I could almost see that happening on that type of play while he's just trying to run around and get out of the way. And so I don't know if it would have happened.
It was almost the exact same play, honestly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because if you notice that play, the defenders were coming around the edges and they were crashing down on him, and they had one guy in the middle that was being blocked, and then Stidham kind of ran forward and to his right. I would have to agree with you guys. I would almost bet my bottom dollar that Russell Wilson would try and spin out of that.
Yep,
exactly. And then he would get caught and take a sack, and the rest would be history, so to speak.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Jarrett has already been announced as a starter for the next game, which is no surprise. And I've been saving an avatar question from very early on, so let me pull that up here. Do we intentionally lose the last game to get a better pick or beat the Raiders' 10 losing streak? I say we beat and need to end the losing streak. And I don't think that there's any person in that locker room that wants to lose this game. Right. You know, as the players have said, Troutman said it the other day, you know, like 9-8 is extremely important to this team. From being the best that the Broncos have been in roughly, 7 seasons, to the fact that they started 1-5 and to finish 8-3 would be a pretty spectacular turnaround. I think that they're going to give it their all to win this game.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree.
Yeah,
you got to end with the winning record, man.
Yeah, and then of course that has you go out into the offseason with a better taste in your mouth than the taste that we all felt last year at 5-12. So that's definitely a win-win, so to speak. I'd have a question for you guys. Okay, if Russell Wilson, let's just suppose, okay, I'm throwing this out there. If Russell Wilson or the Broncos in general had been in a position to be in the playoffs, would they still have gone for Stidham if the Broncos were 10-6?
I don't think so.
So Russell Wilson would have been the quarterback.
I think so, but again, man, that Patriots game sealed it because Russell had multiple dropped interceptions in that game. That was the game that I think sealed Sean Payton's patience with him. Obviously, the play we've all seen where he spins into the sack.
Yep.
That was the one where it's like, all right, we cannot move forward anymore with this. This relationship isn't going to work. And it's not to say Russell hasn't played good football this year. Mm-hmm. He has, but he's a quarterback who thrives in chaos, whereas Sean Payton is a head coach who thrives in structure and organization and throwing over the middle of the field, which is everything Russ does poorly. And Sean Payton doesn't really rock with Russ when he can't do just a little basic stuff when it comes to processing his offense. Sean Payton's offense is almost like learning Mandarin. It really is. And it's like the complete opposite of what Russell's ran for his entire career. It's just not the right fit, man. And I think that the quarterback that in the draft that Sean Payton probably is smitten over is Michael Penix because of some of the stuff that he can do that Sean Payton likes, the quick processing. However, man, if you've got the potential to draft someone like Jaden Daniels, who's got the athleticism of Lamar Jackson, but has an incredible arm and he has good processing too. I think that that's the direction that you have to go towards, because I think Sean Payton's more willing to live with a guy in Jaden Daniels who he runs to throw. Russell, I don't know. You can't even say that about Russell anymore. He just does whatever Russell does.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Jaden Daniels, he's going to be long gone by the time the Broncos pick, right? I mean, that's going to be. So what do you think how far up do you think they'd be willing to trade?
If their guy is there, I think they might be willing to go up into the top 3, top 4.
Wow.
They might be willing to sell the farm if guy that they really like is there, because this team needs a franchise quarterback. They can't dilly-dally with this any longer. They tried to give up the farm to go get the expensive veteran guy. That didn't work. Now they have to go up and get the expense or get the rookie. And if that means trading more future first-round picks, so be it. That's probably what the price is going to have to be.
So, okay, is it just picks or is it players? And if it's players, who would you think would be on the table?
I worry there might be players involved to get picks, and I know this isn't going to be popular, but Pat Surtain.
God, got it. I knew you were going to say that. No.
I don't like it. I wouldn't do it. But I have heard the media entertain that possibility.
All right, so let me ask you this. So you're willing to get rid of a cornerstone player on defense that's a shutdown best corner in the NFL, arguably. I know some people disagree.
I don't know. No argument here.
But
No argument here.
I know some people would, though. I've heard it where, he's 1A, 1B like that. Anyways, the point being is you get rid of cornerstone players on defense where this Broncos team has been really good on safety and corner. You're going to get rid of a person like that to get a rookie quarterback that's going to take at least 2 to 3 years to develop into what you need?
Not necessarily. You could get someone like CJ Stroud. Right
but those are few and far between, Gage. You know that.
They are.
They're few and far between.
That's why I don't do it. I would not do it.
I wouldn't either.
But I have heard this possibility be heavily entertained by the media, and I wouldn't do it, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos did it. Let's just put it that way.
Wow.
Speaking of something that doesn't surprise me, Rich wants to trade Justin Simmons for Justin Fields.
Oh, my God.
No, I don't want Fields. I don't want Fields. I don't want to go down, there was a comment earlier, I forget who said it, that said that, I'm done with, the 1 year contracts of quarterbacks and what they don't work. Well, Peyton Manning worked, but Peyton Manning's totally different than anybody else out there.
He's
really
a unicorn, man.
Yeah, he's crazy. But I would agree to the point where you can't keep going down that road. It's just not. It's run its course. So yes, let's get a quarterback. I just don't want to mortgage the farm to get that guy. Because what if it doesn't work out again? Like some of our other draft picks of quarterbacks haven't worked out. That's my fear. You get rid of a top-notch safety or corner or receiver or whatever, and then you end up with another bust. That's scary.
But at the end of the day, man, you can't hit if you don't swing.
Yeah, true. But if you swing and miss, you're not hitting anything, and that's my fear.
It's true. It all depends on what sword you want to fall on at the end of the day, man. And George Payton, if he's still here, he's proven that he's willing to be aggressive, and he might fall on this Russell Wilson sword. He might get a chance to fall on another one. You never know.
Well, I don't think he's in charge of any sort of decisions like that. I think if Sean Payton sees the shiny new toy that he's looking to have, and he's proven with the contracts that he was doling out in New Orleans that, he's not really thinking long-term as far as some of the ramifications that come from some short-term, benefit. That would be probably one of the most, unless the player hit like super hard, that would be one of the most unpopular trades in or transactions in the history of the Denver Broncos, I would think.
Right.
I'd hate it. I'd hate it so much. But especially if the quarterback hit, man.
Yeah, but especially if Surtain went to one of our rivals like the Raiders or the Chargers or the Chiefs or even the Patriots.
They wouldn't trade him there. They'd trade him.
Well, no.
They would trade him to the NFC.
True.
Like, I think probably the destination would maybe be Arizona, actually. They have a bunch of draft picks. They might be trying to get more draft picks. They could want Marvin Harrison Jr. number 2, or they might be willing to listen to trade offers. And if they can get a franchise piece there in Pat Surtain, I think the Arizona Cardinals could be a potential trade partner for the Denver Broncos if they want to go up to maybe number 2, if Arizona's there. Or I don't know where Arizona's sitting right now after they beat Philadelphia, but I think if they want to get up into the top 5, Arizona could be the team to do it.
Yeah, Keith doesn't even think George Payton's going to have an opportunity to F them picks. He thinks he's going to be...
So he says after the season, he's talking about this season.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, so for GMs, they're on a little bit of a different clock than like coaches and players are. For firing season for GMs is usually after the draft's over. So if the Broncos were to make a move to get rid of George Payton, then it would probably not be until after the draft. Kind of like what happened when they moved off from Brian Zanders to let John Elway run the show full time. Brian Zanders did the 2012 draft, but then after that, it was full-blown John Elway's show.
And it is an interesting concept because this guy sucks so much that we can't keep him around, but we're going to let him be involved in the most major, the biggest event of the year for us outside of anything that happens on the field.
You don't think that Greg, hang on real quick. Do you think Greg Penner wouldn't have the overall say?
Oh yeah, he has. I mean, it would ultimately be his decision because he's got the money. But if Penner is smart, he will listen to the football people here and not be like a David Tepper, because the Panthers coaching staff wanted C.J. Stroud. David Tepper said, "No, we are drafting Bryce Young," and look how well that's going for him.
Yeah.
He didn't listen to the football people.
Right. Sorry about that, Glenn. I didn't mean to catch up.
No. What you guys said was more important. And Tepper, by the way, was fined only $300,000 for throwing, whatever that was in his cup out at the fans out of it. I mean,
he probably blows his nose with $300,000.
Oh, geez.
No, seriously, I expected something a little bit more. I mean, it was just there was nothing even mentioned by the team, nothing mentioned by the Jags. It was just an odd way to handle it. And this guy's like become the biggest a-hole owner in the NFL.
Dan Snyder 2.0, man. He is a POS.
Yeah. Rich says Penner has overall say, but smart owners listen to football people, don't act like Jerry Jones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good news is, thus far, our ownership has been willing to listen to the football people for the most part. They've made mostly sound decisions there. So I feel like the track record for the Broncos ownership group has been good, unlike the David Teppers and Jerry Jones of the world.
Right.
All right, so let's turn our attention with this show has flown by. These comments have been great.
Yeah, this is a great show, man.
Yeah.
So let's turn our attention to the final game of the season, and it truly is the final game of the season.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Broncos are heading to Vegas to play the Raiders. Raiders, another team that has a backup quarterback in Aiden O'Connell, who's done a pretty good job this year. Taking over for Jimmy Garoppolo. But what do you guys see as some of the things that are keys to this game, and how do you think it's going to pan out?
I think it's all about getting Stidham comfortable, kind of like just try to get him into a rhythm with quick completions, kind of what they tried to do last week, but the rust was there. He didn't really have great chemistry with the wide receivers. Hopefully with another week of practice under their belt, they can get that quick rhythm going, get the run game going. Obviously defensively, I feel like you're willing to kind of pay your ears back a little bit and be aggressive when it comes to blitzing Aiden O'Connell and trying to make him uncomfortable. So just kind of the same game plan that the Broncos followed during the 5-game win streak for the most part.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I was going to say, control the ball. Don't have quick 3 and outs. Definitely move the chains, get first downs. It's very important to not leave points on the field. And I mentioned that during the neighborhood, I was losing my mind when it looked like Sean Payton was going to go for that touchdown instead of kicking that field goal, which eventually was the difference as to why Denver had that 7-point lead. Otherwise, it would have been 4. So you can't leave points on the field. I agree, Roger. You got to run the ball. Absolutely, got to run the ball. You have to have the offensive line has to protecting Stidham. And Stidham has to do basically what he did against the Chargers, and that is don't turn the ball over. Be smart, throw the ball away if you have to, but keep your eyes down the field. And I thought he did a really good job, like you mentioned, Gage, of doing that and keeping his eyes down the field. Yeah, he made some bad throws, but like you said, the rust was there, so hopefully they can eliminate that in this practice coming up this week.
Yeah, unfortunately, Rodgers' third bullet point is going to be the hardest part of this game, in my opinion. I think Josh Jacobs is going to run wild on this Broncos defense, and it's a little bit frightening how star running backs for the other teams have really changed the course of so many games this year. I mean, including I harken back to the Jets game, and Breece Hall ended up basically winning that game for the Jets just because we couldn't stop them. And I think that Josh Jacobs is going to have a field day.
Yeah. And he's owned the Broncos throughout his whole career. Like almost all of his best games of his career have been against the Broncos.
Well, I hope he's not able to play. I'm not going to go into my Hitman Bill thing right now, but I hope
he is dealing with an injury right now, so the Broncos might get lucky. The Broncos might get a little lucky right there. I don't know. Did he play last week? He's been out the last couple of weeks. I'm looking right now.
All right,
He
I'll
was
pull up
out
some more.
this week, so he might be out this coming week.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah, so if the Broncos don't have to deal with Josh Jacobs, that's certainly some good news. But they also have a rookie out of Georgia in Zamir White, who they have to be able to account for as well. And another guy who I can't believe we've gone this long without mentioning is Max Crosby. The Broncos are going to have a plan to deal with Max Crosby. There's a chance that Mike McGlinchey might not play in this game with a rib injury.
Wow.
So it might be Cam Fleming at right tackle for the Broncos. Either way, man, no matter who he's rushing against at tackle, Max Crosby is a problem that you have to account for on every single snap. And then, of course, Devontae Adams as well. It's going to be PS2 versus Devontae once again. That's always a fun matchup. Get your popcorn out for that one. But all those star players for the Raiders are guys you really have to account for on almost every given snap.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what the score will be, because the first game right out of the gate was 17-16. Denver had every chance in the world to win that game, and we just didn't do it. So I'm curious to find out, which obviously we'll find out Sunday, what Bronco team shows up. Is it the 17-16 Broncos team, or is it the one that went on that 5-game win streak? I don't know which team's going to show up.
Yep. And just like you talked about earlier with leaving points on the board, Bill, they left 4 points on the board with Will Lutz in that game.
Oh, yeah.
So if Will makes those kicks in that game, the Broncos win. That's what it came down to. So that's the thing, man. You cannot afford to leave points on the board like the Broncos did, especially in the early part of the season and in that week 1 game against the Raiders.
Yeah, very well said. Absolutely.
So Keith asks, what's going on with Javonte Williams? Is he just worn out or hurt because he's looked like
like shit?
I think, you know what? This is a guy that we were just so shocked that he was even able to come back at the time he did. I honestly think he's just kind of, for somebody that I think he's kind of run his course this year. Maybe they even sit him down for fear that he could get hurt again. The last 3 games I don't know. The last 3 games he's averaged less than 3 yards per carry. So, it's I don't know. I think it's just been a long season, and he had a long recovery that he came out of so much better than any of us could have expected. So, I know that there's been a lot of criticism of Javonte over the last few weeks, but I mean, I give the guy all the credit in the world to fight back the way he did, and to be able to play, in the preseason is just astounding after what he went through.
He could be out of game shape. I mean, he hasn't really, like you said, Glenn, that whole recovery process and all that. He's focusing on that. And then when he came out of the gates, like blazing saddles, man, basically, I mean, just guns a-blazing, so to speak. I just think maybe the longevity of the season may have just worn him down to the point where he just doesn't have it right now.
Well, we think about it, man. He tore 3 out of the 4 major ligaments in your knee. That's an injury that takes 2 years to truly bounce back from if you're a professional athlete. Dalvin Cook had a very similar injury his rookie year, and it wasn't until his second year back where he really looked like Dalvin Cook again.
He just got released.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's kind of run his course in the NFL, I feel like. But back then, man, he was kind of in the same situation Javonte is, where you're hoping he can bounce back in year 2 off of that ACL and look like the Javonte of old again.
Right.
Yeah, it just feels like right now he's got cinder blocks weighing his feet down. He doesn't have great vision right now. His only positive quality as a runner is running over guys, and he's just got to go through this offseason, get his knee right, and hopefully be able to bounce back next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. So what are your predictions for the game? Bill, what do you have?
Oh, boy. Well, I said with Stidham playing against the Chargers, I thought the Broncos would lose that game 23-16. I'm glad I was wrong. So I might as well stay on that road and hopefully be wrong again. But given on the road in Vegas, last game of the season, I know the Broncos are going to play their hearts out. But I know the Raiders are too. Golly, I really want to say the Broncos have this game won, but I I'm gonna go and hope that I'm wrong and say the final score will be Vegas 20, Broncos 17.
Again, Bill, I think just like you said, both teams are going to spill everything that they have onto the field in the final game. Both teams out of the playoffs. Raiders fighting for their interim head coach and Antonio Pierce to possibly get the job full time. That's something that they're really going to fight for. But the Broncos, after the turmoil that they've had over these last couple of weeks and just how important this win is for them to get that winning record after starting the year 1-5, this means more to the Broncos, I feel like, at the end of the day. So I am going to pick Denver to win this game 24-17.
Okay. I like your prediction.
And I'm kind of in the Bill line of thinking, it's like it just really could be one of those situations where the Broncos lose to the Raiders again. You just never know how we're going to bounce back with Stidham at the helm for the second week in a row. But Gage said it perfectly. This is a really telling moment for the team, our team, moving forward. It doesn't, week 18 doesn't mean squat for the Broncos in terms of anything more than this is a way to build upon and to band together and to put things behind us and to say, you know what, we're a good freaking team after all. And we faced a lot of adversity that we really put ourselves in the hole. It wasn't adversity that we were faced because of injuries or anything like that. I think Will Lutz kicks a field goal at the very end to win 24-23, and the Broncos get their 9-8 season.
That'd be very poetic, man. That would be a very poetic way to end it. Will Lutz redemption arc right there. But I feel like this game in very many ways means the same to the Broncos as that last game for the Lions against the Packers, where obviously we're not trying to knock our division rival out of the playoffs, but we are trying to get that 9th win and truly establish that we are a good football team and we're coming next season. The Denver Broncos are here and we are ready to compete. And that's the statement that I feel like the Denver Broncos are going to try to put out there with this game, very much like the Lions did last year.
Well, I'm hoping you guys are right because I don't want to be right. That's for sure. I don't want to be right. So I hope you guys are.
Well, we know that. I mean, we listen to half their opinion.
Oh, man.
Anyway, well, Bill, thank you for being our foil. Sometimes tin foil, but tonight. But we appreciate you joining and filling in and joining the fun. Engage as always. You are the man.
It's been fun. It's been real fun. I like you said, Glenn. There's been a whole lot of good comments in the from the people in the chat. So that's cool.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody in the chat. Stay tuned to the MHRT Network. We have shows every day. We have Sports Nonsense and Whiskey starts at 9:30 with their episode, and it looks like they're going to dive deep into the college football playoffs, which we really didn't even touch on because things took a different turn. But thank you to everybody for the comments and the support. We truly believe it. We truly appreciate it, and we will see you next Tuesday, and we'll see if we're a 9-8 team or an 8-9 team. But thanks so much, everybody.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out.